Most guests tread carefully with Maher, but Jane Fonda arrived ready to defend her brand of activism. Until Maher launched a barrage of truth bombs that turned live TV into a battleground over Hollywood hypocrisy and woke contradictions. This wasn't just a clash of egos, it exposed rifts that could reshape how stars talk politics. But what really pushed Fonda to the edge? Maher built his reputation as a comedian who skewers both sides. But in recent years, he's become the face of a new kind of liberal skepticism. On his shows, Maher rails against what he calls woke extremism, targeting everything from cancel culture to shifting norms around gender and policing. His monologues are peppered with references to public polls, like the Gallup survey showing most Black Americans don't want less policing. And he's not shy about calling out his own side for what he sees as moral grandstanding. Maher's stance hardened during the Trump era, when he began warning that progressive excesses, especially in Hollywood, were alienating the very people liberals claim to champion. His interviews with activists and celebrities often end in heated debate, sometimes laughter and sometimes open discomfort. Producers have leaned into this reputation, booking guests who represent the causes Maher loves to challenge. Jane Fonda, on the other hand, is no stranger to controversy. Her activism stretches back over 50 years, from her anti-war protests during Vietnam, earning her the nickname Hanoi Jane, to her leadership in feminist movements and climate rallies. Fonda's recent Fire Drill Fridays have drawn thousands to the Capitol, demanding urgent action on the climate crisis. She's helped launch the Women's Media Center and stood on the front lines of the #MeToo movement. Friends and colleagues describe her as principled, sometimes idealistic, and always ready to use her platform for what she believes is justice. Fonda herself has said, "It's not about being radical, it's about being awake." Both Maher and Fonda have spent decades in the public eye, but their approaches couldn't be more different. Maher warns against ideological purity tests and sees Hollywood's activism as too often disconnected from real life. Fonda insists that celebrities have a duty to speak out, even if their own lives aren't perfect. She's acknowledged the contradictions, flying to climate protests, for example, but argues that imperfection shouldn't silence advocacy. Maher, meanwhile, is quick to ask why so many in Hollywood seem to preach what they can't practice. Their meeting on set brought these worldviews into sharp contrast, setting the stage for a conversation that would test not just their arguments, but the cultural moment itself. In a media landscape hungry for confrontation, the clash between Maher's contrarian logic and Fonda's passionate activism was more than just another celebrity spat. It was a collision of two philosophies, each convinced they're fighting for the soul of American progress. Energy in the studio snapped to attention the moment the mics went hot. Maher, leaning into his signature role as Hollywood's in-house skeptic, wasted no time before tossing out the first barb. He looked straight at Fonda and, with a half smirk, asked how she squares her climate activism with the reality of celebrity lifestyles. The question wasn't gentle. "How many private jets are parked at climate rallies these days, Jane?" he teased, drawing the first real laugh from the audience. Sharp, almost nervous. The timing wasn't accidental. Producers had cued the audience to respond, hoping to keep the conversation lively, but Maher's delivery cut deeper than scripted banter. Fonda, unfazed at first, replied that nobody's perfect and that the point is to use your platform for good. Maher pounced, "So it's do as I say, not as I do?" The crowd responded with another burst of laughter, louder this time. The tension on set was palpable, the laughter landing like a challenge. The conversation shifted quickly from personal choices to Hollywood's broader reputation. Maher pointed out how often celebrities demand change, while living in ways that seem untouched by the causes they champion. He referenced the latest poll showing that while most Americans support climate action in principle, only a third are willing to pay even $100 more a year for it. "People love saving the world," Maher quipped, "as long as it doesn't cost them." The audience, primed by the earlier exchange, erupted again. Fonda, visibly bracing, countered that real change requires everyone, especially those with the biggest platforms, to speak up. But Maher pressed on. Isn't it a problem when the loudest voices are the ones least affected by the fallout? The live audience, sensing the rising stakes, played its part. Laughter and applause followed Maher's sharper lines, while Fonda's answers drew a quieter, more thoughtful response. The initial warmth of the set faded, replaced by the unmistakable charge of live debate. Maher's early jabs weren't just jokes. They set the rhythm for what would become a relentless interrogation of Hollywood's conscience. Each exchange edged closer to confrontation, and the crowd's reaction made clear that this was no friendly chat. The clash had begun in earnest, and neither side looked ready to back down. Midway through the broadcast, the conversation shifted sharply as Maher pressed Fonda on the phrase, "men can get pregnant." Fonda replied that language adapts to reflect social change, referencing trans men and non-binary people. Maher countered, pointing to Planned Parenthood and major medical centers, where official documents now use pregnant people and include trans men in reproductive protocols. He argued this wasn't a fringe idea anymore, but standard in advocacy groups and university policies. The debate moved to the limits of free speech. Fonda insisted most people want decency, not to feel erased. Maher argued that the new culture of offense had become a way to silence dissent, especially in Hollywood, where he claimed people feared speaking out on gender or politics. Fonda maintained that some ideas are dangerous and should be policed. Maher fired back, "That's the difference, Jane. Liberals used to defend free speech for everyone. Now it's about shutting down what's uncomfortable." At 37:16, the YouTube broadcast cut abruptly. Only on Maher's Substack did the director's cut reveal 40 more seconds of heated exchange. Maher challenged Fonda, asking when she began siding with censors. Fonda tried to distinguish hate speech from free expression, but Maher pressed, "Who decides what's hate? Once you build the guillotine, it swings both ways." Fonda glanced at the audience, conceding things had gotten too hot on both sides. Maher ended with a line missing from the main broadcast. "I'd rather risk offense than silence. That's the old liberal idea, maybe the only one that matters." Online, the missing segment became a flashpoint as viewers dissected how the edit softened the confrontation. Backstage, the mood was tense. Crew members kept their distance as Jane Fonda left the set, her team close behind, skipping the usual post-show chatter. Bill Maher, meanwhile, looked unfazed, trading wry comments with producers about the night's fireworks. The contrast was clear. Fonda's camp moved quickly, avoiding the press, while Maher seemed energized by the confrontation. Within hours, clips from the episode started circulating online. Social media feeds filled with sharp takes and looping video snippets, especially from the heated exchange on free speech and the boundaries of activism. Conservative commentators seized on Maher's toughest lines, framing the moment as a reckoning for Hollywood's moral double standards. Hashtags like #LogicOverWoke and #TruthBombs picked up steam, landing in trending columns across platforms. Viewers replayed Maher's quips about climate hypocrisy and the cost of virtue signaling, while memes of Fonda's silent pause spread among critics and fans alike. Pollsters and pundits joined the fray, pulling up data to make sense of the split. A Pew Research Center poll from 2023 flashed across news segments. While 69% of Americans support carbon neutrality by 2050, only 31% are willing to pay $100 more per year to get there. The numbers echoed Maher's point about the limits of public commitment. Media outlets on both sides dissected the night's debate, but the bigger message was hard to miss. The clash had spilled out of the studio and into the broader culture war, exposing a deep divide over who gets to speak for change, and at what cost. At the 37-minute and 16-second mark, a visible jump cut altered the broadcast, leaving 40 seconds of exchange between Bill Maher and Jane Fonda, available only on the director's cut. Throughout their on-air clash, Maher drew from polling data and public statements to challenge Fonda's positions, while Fonda defended her record of climate activism. Despite extensive analysis, no publicly verified producer memo confirms a deliberate strategy to provoke controversy, and precise metrics on the hashtag Maher owns Fonda trending remain unverified. What is clear is how the exchange reflected ongoing divides over activism and free speech. echoing Maher's decade-long critique of ideological excess and Fonda's commitment to protest. The missing footage and limited access to full audience data means some elements of this confrontation remain unresolved. As debates over language and activism continue in public life, this televised moment underscores how edited narratives and selective facts shape perception. The broadcast stands as a documented clash of worldviews, marked by evidence but still shadowed by unanswered questions.